Imagine a world where love itself was a crime, where a glance of affection could cost you everything: your family, your name, even your life. In 1847 Georgia, two sisters stood before that world and chose love anyway. They defied the chains of custom, color, and power to follow the quiet voice of their hearts, proving that sometimes the most forbidden act is simply to be human in a world that has forgotten what humanity means. In the deep heart of Georgia in 1847, the story of the twins and their enslaved men began within the suffocating walls of a plantation that reflected the cruelty and contradictions of the Old South. It was a world where the white elite preached morality, yet built their lives on inhumanity, where the church sanctified the power of the master and ignored the cries of the enslaved. Amid this hypocrisy, the Georgia twins were born into privilege, inheriting both wealth and ignorance, both the grace of education and the curse of ownership. From childhood, they lived surrounded by the enslaved, men, women, and children who labored for their family's comfort, whose pain was hidden beneath forced smiles and measured obedience. Yet, within this environment, the twins saw something that many of their class refused to see: the quiet humanity of the people around them. They saw laughter in the fields, tenderness between mothers and children, and the wisdom of men and women whose strength defied their bondage. Slowly, the foundation of what they had been taught began to crack, and their hearts started to awaken to a truth that society could never allow them to admit. The enslaved men who would later become their husbands were not faceless workers in the eyes of the twins. They were individuals, intelligent, compassionate, and brave, whose presence carried both dignity and sorrow. What began as companionship grew into a connection neither side had planned nor could control. In stolen glances and whispered words, something sacred took shape. The twins, accustomed to being obeyed, found themselves listening, learning, and feeling something entirely forbidden: equality. The men, born into servitude, discovered the impossible, a form of affection that crossed the cruel boundaries drawn by those who claimed to own them. Their love was not born out of rebellion at first, but out of simple human closeness. They shared spaces, stories, laughter, and small acts of kindness that, in a world built on separation, became dangerous signs of emotional intimacy. The walls that divided master and enslaved began to fade in their hearts, even as the world outside tightened its grip to preserve them. In this small corner of Georgia, love became an act of quiet resistance long before it was spoken aloud. The twins, raised under a father who likely taught them that ownership defined worth, began to question everything. How could something as natural as love be wrong? How could the same society that turned a blind eye to white men's exploitation of enslaved women condemn the mutual affection between two souls of different colors? Every realization pushed them further toward a truth that would change their lives forever. In the men they loved, they saw reflections of their own longing for freedom, for respect, for the right to choose one's destiny. This emotional awakening was dangerous not just because of its defiance, but because it revealed the moral fragility of the system they were born to uphold. When the twins decided to marry their enslaved partners, they were not acting out of youthful recklessness but deep conviction. They understood the cost. They knew that such unions were illegal, despised, and punished with exile, imprisonment, or worse. Yet they also knew that denying their hearts meant surrendering their humanity to a world that had already surrendered its soul. Their decision was not made in a moment of passion, but after years of quiet realization that love, in its purest form, demands truth. That truth cost them everything: family, reputation, inheritance, and safety, but it also granted them something far greater: freedom of conscience. They may have been shunned by the society that raised them, but they stepped into the unknown with the courage that only love can inspire. The secrecy of their marriages added to the sacred weight of their choice. There were no grand ceremonies, no witnesses from the white world to approve their vows. Perhaps beneath the canopy of night, or within a hidden cabin, they exchanged words that no law could legitimize, but no law could erase. Those moments of commitment were not only acts of love, they were acts of spiritual rebellion against a structure that demanded obedience over compassion. Each whispered vow was a defiance of generations of hate, an assertion that their souls could not be owned, bought, or silenced. In their unions, they redefined what it meant to be free, proving that freedom begins within the heart, even when the body remains bound by law. This single act of love, hidden in the shadows of 1847, carried implications far beyond their lives. It symbolized the deepest truth about the human spirit, that it cannot be fully broken, no matter how cruel the cage. Their relationship defied centuries of doctrine designed to separate and dehumanize. It revealed that love is not a social privilege, but a universal instinct that transcends race, class, and status. The bond between the Georgia twins and the men they loved was not just a personal affair. It was a living contradiction to the ideology that sustained slavery. Every moment they spent together was a silent protest against a world that thrived on separation and fear. Their love became a mirror, reflecting the hypocrisy of a society that could tolerate brutality but not affection, domination but not equality. And though their story may have been buried beneath the shame and silence of their time, its heartbeat continues to echo as proof that even in the darkest chapters of human history, love found a way to survive, to resist, and to remind the world that no power is greater than the truth of human connection. The marriages between the Georgia twins and the enslaved men they loved were not simply romantic choices. They were acts of rebellion so profound that they shook the moral foundations of the world around them. In the society of 1847 Georgia, everything was dictated by race, class, and hierarchy. Love had rules, marriage had boundaries, and affection between a white woman and an enslaved man was seen as an unthinkable violation of the order that kept slavery intact. Yet love, in its rawest form, cannot be caged by custom or controlled by fear. The twins' decision to marry the men they loved was a declaration that their hearts belonged to no law, no family command, no inherited prejudice. They stepped across the invisible line that divided master and slave, risking everything to prove that love could exist even where humanity was denied. This defiance did not emerge from rebellion for its own sake, but from a truth too deep to suppress. They understood that what they felt was pure, while the society condemning them was corrupt. In choosing to honor their love through marriage, they challenged every structure that defined their world. Marriage in the antebellum South was not just a union of two people. It was a symbol of power, inheritance, and racial control. By entering into a sacred bond with enslaved men, the twins stripped that symbol of its exclusivity. Their union said to the world that affection and loyalty could not be dictated by ownership or bloodline. It said that the heart recognized equality long before the law ever would. Theirs was not a love whispered in darkness forever. They made vows, a commitment of soul and spirit, knowing that the moment those words left their lips, their lives would never be the same. Each vow was a revolution in itself. It was not merely an exchange of love, but a confrontation of lies, a declaration that the human soul could not be categorized by race. Every aspect of their relationship defied expectation. They were women raised to embody Southern purity and submission, yet they defied the expectations of their fathers, their church, and their entire social order. The men they loved were born into chains, denied education, stripped of identity, and yet they embodied more integrity and compassion than the men who claimed to own them. The twins saw this truth clearly, and that clarity became their rebellion. Their marriages were not only acts of personal devotion, but acts of political courage. They did what abolitionists and preachers could not. They exposed the cruelty of a world where love itself was outlawed. The risk they took was unimaginable. They faced ostracism, violence, and the loss of every form of privilege they had ever known. Yet they chose to face it because love had awakened something in them that comfort and obedience never could. The conviction that every person deserves dignity and every heart has the right to love freely. Their defiance was not loud or public. It was silent, tender, and powerful. Their act of marriage was not recognized by law, but it was sanctified by the truth of their emotions. The world they lived in might have dismissed their vows as meaningless, but to them those moments of union were sacred, an affirmation of equality in a time when equality itself was a forbidden dream. Through their choice, they became part of a larger story, one written not in history books, but in the hearts of those who would later fight for freedom. Their love stood as a whisper of rebellion that carried the weight of centuries, proving that justice does not always begin in courts or battlefields. It begins in the courage to love someone the world tells you not to. Even in secrecy, their marriages carried the power of truth. Each hidden meeting, each shared word, and each act of affection challenged the very structure of oppression. It was a love that refused to bow to fear, a commitment that declared the supremacy of the human spirit over social command. Theirs was a rebellion of the heart, fought not with anger but with tenderness, not with arms but with devotion. Their unions revealed that love can be both a sanctuary and a weapon, capable of dismantling the lies that sustain injustice. Every risk they took, every punishment they faced, added weight to a truth history could not erase: that the heart, once awakened to its own freedom, will never again submit to chains. In a world where cruelty was normalized and compassion was weakness, the Georgia twins' marriages became living proof that love itself is the greatest act of defiance. They did not simply cross social boundaries, they destroyed them. By pledging themselves to the men society called inferior, they exposed the hollowness of racial purity and moral superiority. Their rebellion was deeply human, driven not by ideology, but by the undeniable pull of affection, respect, and shared humanity. Though their names may be lost to time, their story remains a timeless lesson, that love, when it is true, will always challenge the structures that try to contain it, and that the simplest human bond can become the most radical force in the world. Their forbidden marriages were not a scandal of sin, but a sacred stand for the dignity of every soul, a reminder that love, no matter how hidden or punished, always carries the power to redefine what it means to be free. The aftermath of the Georgia twins' forbidden marriages was a storm of wrath and condemnation that revealed the brutal heart of the society they had defied. Their love, once hidden and sacred, became the center of outrage among their community, for it struck at the very core of the Southern order. In 1847, Georgia, whiteness was not only a color, but a privilege, and womanhood within that system was defined by obedience to race and family rather than by conscience or emotion. When the twins broke those rules, they exposed how fragile that power truly was. The moment their unions became known, whispers turned into accusations, and accusations turned into threats. The very people who had once admired them now looked upon them as disgraces, their names spoken with disgust in drawing rooms and church pews alike. Their love was treated not as a human emotion, but as a disease that threatened to infect the entire social fabric of their world. They were no longer daughters of prestige, but symbols of betrayal. Betrayal of blood, of whiteness, of Southern womanhood itself. The society that turned against them did so with a violence that was both emotional and physical. For the twins, isolation came swiftly. Families cut ties, friends disappeared, and even the church that had taught them about divine love condemned them as sinners, unworthy of forgiveness. But the cruelty that fell upon the enslaved men was far worse. For daring to love women who had been considered their owners' daughters, they faced the wrath of a system that demanded total submission. The men were beaten, imprisoned, and threatened with being sold far away, separated from the women who had risked everything for them. The law, which had always protected the oppressors, now became the weapon used to destroy their peace. Their love was no longer a secret act of courage. It had become a public scandal to be erased. The twins begged for mercy, but the same society that tolerated daily violence against enslaved people could not tolerate love that crossed the color line. Their defiance was seen as more dangerous than rebellion because it came not from anger, but from compassion, not from vengeance, but from unity. This fierce backlash revealed how deeply the South depended on emotional division to sustain slavery. The entire system required white people to believe that they were different, superior, and untouchable. The twins' marriages shattered that illusion, proving that affection could cross the barriers that slavery had built. It terrified their community because it showed that the foundation of control was not as solid as they believed. If white women could see humanity and worth in black men, then the entire ideology of racial superiority began to crumble. Their defiance was not political, yet it became a political threat. Every rumor of their love spread fear. Fear that other women might follow, fear that enslaved people might believe themselves deserving of love and respect, fear that the hierarchy itself could collapse. The punishment inflicted on them was therefore not merely personal vengeance. It was a warning to others, a desperate attempt to restore the order that love had shaken. The suffering that followed was immense. The twins were stripped of inheritance, denied protection, and forced to live as outcasts. They faced hunger, loneliness, and the constant dread that the men they loved might be taken from them forever. Yet, in the midst of such cruelty, they refused to renounce their choices. Their silence became a form of endurance, their pain a quiet protest. Every insult they endured only deepened their understanding of the world's hypocrisy. They saw clearly that the same people who called them shameful were the ones who allowed injustice to thrive daily. Their punishment was meant to break them, but instead it exposed how corrupted and afraid their society truly was. Through their suffering, they revealed the truth that the most dangerous act in an unjust world is to see others as equals. For the men they loved, each day was a battle for survival. Their bond with the twins gave them both hope and fear. Hope because they had been loved as human beings, and fear because that love might cost them their lives. To the slaveholders and lawmakers, their very existence as partners to white women was a threat that had to be erased. They represented everything the South denied, that black men could be capable of tenderness, intellect, and devotion. By loving and being loved, they refuted the lie of inferiority upon which slavery depended. Their punishment, though brutal, could not erase the truth their love had already revealed. Even if separated, even if silenced, the legacy of their union lived on as a wound in the conscience of their society, a wound that no law could heal. The fury of that world against them exposed how the greatest threat to oppression is not violence but empathy. The twins' marriages did not destroy their community's morals. They exposed that those morals had never truly existed. In the face of hatred, their endurance became a testimony of the power of the human heart. Though history may not have preserved their full names or faces, their courage outlived the world that condemned them. Their pain echoed far beyond their time, whispering to generations to come that no structure built on fear and prejudice can survive forever. The wrath they faced was proof of how powerful love can be when it dares to exist where it is forbidden, and how even in the darkest places, it has the strength to make tyrants tremble. The story of the Georgia twins reveals not only an act of forbidden love, but also a mirror reflecting the hypocrisy and moral decay that defined the Old South. The very society that condemned these women for loving enslaved men was the same society that turned a blind eye to the daily exploitation of enslaved women by white masters. In that world, white men could violate, father children with, and discard enslaved women without consequence. Yet when two white women chose to love and marry black men in sincerity and mutual respect, it was treated as a sin against God and nature. This contradiction exposes how deeply racism and control were embedded into the moral framework of the South. The laws and customs of the time were never truly about morality. They were about power. Slavery was sustained not only through chains and whips, but through the manipulation of fear, shame, and false virtue. The outrage that met the twins' decision was not born of genuine moral conviction. It was born of terror, the fear that the illusion of white superiority could crumble if equality were ever acknowledged in love. The entire social system of the antebellum South rested on the lie of racial hierarchy. Every institution, religious, political, and domestic, worked to maintain the fiction that white people were divinely chosen to rule and that black people were destined to serve. This belief was not sustained by truth, but by repetition, violence, and the suppression of empathy. The Georgia twins, through their choices, pierced that illusion. Their love proved that compassion and emotional connection could not be restricted by color or class. It showed that human nature itself rebelled against artificial barriers. For the South, such a revelation was intolerable because if love could see no race, then neither could morality, intelligence, or worth. The twins did not intend to wage a political war, but their actions forced society to confront the hypocrisy it had carefully concealed for generations. Their love exposed that the so-called virtue of the Southern order was nothing more than cruelty dressed in religion and respectability. The church, which should have been the sanctuary of truth and compassion, became one of the loudest voices condemning the twins. Ministers preached that they had defied divine law, citing scripture to defend prejudice while ignoring the deeper teachings of mercy, equality, and love. In their sermons, they described the twins as fallen women, using religion as a weapon to protect social power. Yet, the same pulpits that cursed these women stayed silent about the atrocities committed daily on the plantations. Their selective morality revealed the corruption of faith under the weight of greed and fear. The twins' love, though condemned as sinful, was in truth an act of spiritual clarity. It recognized the divine spark in those society had dehumanized. By following their hearts, the twins unknowingly stood on the side of genuine faith, one that honors the sacred worth of every soul. The economic system of slavery also depended on controlling not just labor, but relationships. Plantation owners feared any emotional bond between enslaved and free people because such bonds made slavery harder to justify. When affection crossed racial lines, it threatened the economic machinery that turned human beings into property. If love could exist between master and enslaved, then the entire logic of ownership collapsed. This is why the reaction to the twins' marriages was so ferocious, because it was not merely an act of personal defiance, but an existential threat to the system itself. Their love challenged the lie that slavery was natural or divinely ordained. It demonstrated that humanity could not be divided so easily. For the ruling class, the twins' choice was more dangerous than rebellion. It was emotional freedom, and emotional freedom was the seed of revolution. The double standard that allowed white men to exploit enslaved women while condemning love between white women and black men was one of the ugliest truths of the time. The South built its sense of morality around gender and race, defining white womanhood as fragile, pure, and in need of protection, while enslaved women were labeled as immoral and unworthy of respect. This lie justified both sexual violence and racial domination. The twins' actions destroyed that carefully crafted narrative. By choosing love rather than control, by seeing black men as partners instead of property, they rejected the very definitions of purity and obedience that had been forced upon them since birth. They showed that morality did not belong to the powerful, and virtue did not belong to the privileged. True morality lay in compassion, courage, and truth. The outrage that followed their actions was an admission of guilt from the society that punished them. The same people who called them immoral were the ones whose silence upheld cruelty. Their story revealed the weakness behind the South's supposed strength, a fear of truth. The Georgia twins' love brought into the open what everyone already knew but dared not speak, that the humanity of the enslaved was undeniable. The hypocrisy of their world was laid bare in the most intimate way, through the defiance of two women who refused to lie to their own hearts. Their act became a moral mirror, forcing even their harshest critics to see themselves as they truly were, people who would rather destroy love than admit equality. The hypocrisy of the Old South was not merely a political or economic failure, it was a spiritual one. The twins' love story stripped away the layers of polite cruelty that disguised the region's sins. Their lives, though marked by pain and rejection, became a testimony that truth and love are the greatest threats to any system built on lies. Through their courage, they revealed that the greatest immorality was not in loving across racial lines, but in denying love altogether. They proved that the soul cannot be segregated, that the heart does not obey the boundaries of power, and that even in a world built on hypocrisy, love can still find the strength to expose what is false and awaken what is just. The cost of love for the Georgia twins and their enslaved husbands was immense and unforgiving. In a time when every law, every church sermon, and every social rule stood against them, the price of following their hearts was nothing short of exile from the world they knew. Love in the 19th century South was not a matter of the soul. It was a transaction of race and class. Marriages were alliances of wealth, status, and family power, not unions of affection. For two white women to defy this order and give themselves to enslaved men was to destroy every expectation placed upon them. They did not merely fall in love, they stepped out of the boundaries of what society would ever forgive. When their secret was revealed, they faced the full force of that society's vengeance. They lost their inheritance, their home, their family's name, and the protection that white womanhood afforded. The very privileges they had been born into were stripped from them because they dared to love as equals rather than as masters. The men they married paid an even harsher price. In the eyes of the law, they were property, incapable of consent, incapable of marriage, incapable even of love. To claim a bond with white women was seen as rebellion. Their existence as husbands to white women was not just forbidden, it was punishable by death or by the brutal severing of that bond through sale and separation. The system of slavery depended on control, and nothing broke that control faster than the acknowledgement of humanity. These men, through their love, declared themselves human in a society built to deny it. They faced violence, imprisonment, and the constant threat of being sold far from the women who had chosen them. Every moment they remained together was a defiance of ownership. Every word of tenderness they exchanged was a challenge to the structure that defined them as things, not people. For the twins, the cost of love was not only material, but emotional. They had been raised in comfort, surrounded by luxury and the illusion of moral superiority. They were taught that obedience was virtue and that rebellion was sin. Yet when they followed their hearts, they found themselves standing alone in a world that no longer recognized them. Friends who once adored them turned away in disgust. Families that had once boasted of their grace now called them shameful. The community that had once sheltered them now sought to destroy them. In choosing love, they lost belonging. The weight of isolation pressed down on them every day. But even in that isolation, they found a strange kind of freedom. They had finally become the authors of their own souls, no longer defined by the hypocrisy of their birthright, but by the truth of their conviction. The love they shared with their husbands became both their punishment and their sanctuary. In a world where love was used as a weapon of control, they found in it the only space where they could be honest, human, and free. Their marriages may have been condemned, but within those relationships lay the purest form of equality the South had ever seen. They did not love from above or below, but side by side. Their home, however humble or hidden, was a place where the boundaries of race and class disappeared, even if only for a moment. That small act of love carried the weight of revolution, for it proved that equality was not a political theory, but an emotional reality. Their shared suffering created a bond stronger than any law could break, and though their lives were marred by loss, they found a kind of peace that their oppressors could never know, the peace of being true to one's heart. The legacy of their courage did not end with their suffering. Though their names faded into the margins of history, their story survived in whispers and family tales, passed down as both warning and inspiration. Some saw them as cautionary figures, proof of what happens when one defies society, but others saw them as martyrs of love and truth. Their defiance spoke to a deeper yearning within the human spirit, the need to love freely, to live authentically, and to challenge injustice even when it comes disguised as morality. The Georgia twins may have lived and died in exile, but their actions echoed across generations. In the centuries that followed, their story became a quiet prophecy of the future, a world where love would no longer be punished for crossing color lines, where marriage would no longer be dictated by law or prejudice, but by the hearts of those who choose each other. Their courage can only be understood fully when one considers what they gave up and what they gained. They traded privilege for truth, comfort for conscience, and acceptance for authenticity. The cost of their love was everything the world valued, but the reward was something the world could never offer: the peace of knowing they had lived honestly. They walked through shame, fear, and loss, but they walked together. That unity in the face of hatred was itself an act of triumph. It transformed their suffering into a message that outlived them, that love is not weakness but strength, that it can survive even when stripped of every protection, and that the human heart, once awakened, will always choose truth over tradition. Their story reminds us that every step toward justice begins with a personal act of courage. Before laws change, before societies evolve, someone must first decide to love against the rules. The Georgia twins did just that. Their sacrifice was not in vain because it added another thread to the tapestry of human progress. A testament that no chain, no law, no prejudice can completely silence the truth of the heart. The cost of their love was immense, but in paying it, they bought something far greater than survival. They purchased dignity, authenticity, and a legacy of defiance that would one day help others walk in freedom. Their story stands as a reminder that love, even when crushed by cruelty, always leaves behind a light that cannot be extinguished. The forbidden Pact of 1847, when the Georgia twins married the enslaved men they loved, is not merely a tale of defiance or scandal. It is a story that strips away the illusions of race, power, and hierarchy to reveal the unchanging essence of human nature. At its heart lies a truth that transcends centuries: that love, compassion, and equality are not social constructs, but spiritual certainties that no law or prejudice can destroy. When the twins looked into the eyes of the men who had been deemed beneath them, they did not see property, inferiority, or danger. They saw humanity, This simple recognition was a radical act. In a world built on the denial of that humanity, seeing it clearly was as dangerous as shouting rebellion from the courthouse steps. What they saw and felt broke through the walls that society had constructed around them since birth. They had been taught to measure human worth by color, to view affection through the lens of ownership, and to fear connection that crossed social boundaries. Yet the human heart, in its deepest wisdom, recognizes what the mind is trained to deny. Their love was the human spirit insisting on truth in a world built on lies. This truth, the equality of all souls, was a fire that could not be smothered by fear or tradition. It burned quietly but fiercely within them, forcing them to question the morality of everything they had inherited. They had been told that slavery was a divine order, that the white race was chosen by God to rule, and that to cross racial lines in love was to invite damnation. But as their love grew, these teachings crumbled under the weight of reality. They saw that the men they loved possessed strength, kindness, and integrity that no amount of suffering could erase. They saw that the enslaved were not the degraded beings their society claimed them to be, but men and women with dreams, intelligence, and hearts as vast as their own. In that realization, the twins were reborn, not as daughters of privilege, but as witnesses of truth. Their love opened their eyes to the humanity that slavery had tried so hard to hide. What makes their story so profound is not only that they defied the law, but that they redefined morality. They demonstrated that righteousness does not lie in obedience to society's rules, but in the courage to see and honor the humanity of others. Their love was an act of spiritual revolution, a quiet yet powerful assertion that no human being has the right to dominate another. In loving the enslaved men, they were also rejecting the lies that had shaped their world. They were saying, without speeches or weapons, that love is the ultimate equalizer, that no soul can truly belong to another, and that power without compassion is corruption. This revelation was dangerous because it struck at the heart of the slaveholding order. If a white woman could see equality in a black man, the foundation of white supremacy began to crack. The institution of slavery depended on blindness, on people refusing to see what was human in those they oppressed. The twins, by simply seeing clearly, became revolutionaries. Their act of love also invites us to reflect on the timeless struggle between the human heart and the structures that seek to control it. Throughout history, systems of oppression, whether racial, social, or religious, have survived by dividing people and convincing them to ignore their shared humanity. The Georgia twins' story reminds us that the first step toward justice is the willingness to feel empathy where the world tells you not to. The moment you see another person's suffering as your own, the power of oppression begins to crumble. Their love was not just romantic, it was a moral awakening. It asked them, and it asks us, what it means to be human. It revealed that compassion is not weakness, that empathy is not disobedience, and that love, in its purest form, is the most radical force in existence because it refuses to recognize false boundaries. The hidden truth their love exposed is one that still echoes today, that humanity cannot be divided by color, class, or status. The soul does not carry the marks of race. The human spirit, when left uncorrupted by greed or fear, always seeks connection, always recognizes itself in others. The twins and their husbands lived in a time when everything around them denied this truth, yet they proved it through their actions. Even when punished, isolated, and shamed, they refused to renounce their love. They lived as outcasts, but died as free souls, having seen the world as it truly is, not as it was taught to them. Their story stands as a testament to the fact that truth often lives in the hearts of the marginalized, not the powerful. It reminds us that genuine love, even when buried under hate, can never be erased because it is rooted in something eternal. When we think about their legacy, we are confronted with a question that transcends their time. How many injustices today still depend on our willingness to look away from one another's humanity? Their story challenges every generation to examine its own walls of prejudice and its own chains of indifference. The Georgia twins may have lived and died within the shadows of history, but their defiance shines through time as a quiet beacon of courage. They showed that no matter how deeply hate is institutionalized, love remains the greater law. Their love was not perfect, not safe, but profoundly true. It was the love that breaks illusions, heals blindness, and reveals what lies beneath every human heart. A longing to be seen, to be free, and to be loved without condition. In their story, the forbidden becomes sacred, the silenced become immortal, and the truth becomes undeniable, that humanity is one, and that love, in its purest and most fearless form, is the only force that can ever set it free. The story of the Georgia twins who married their enslaved beloveds is not only a chapter in forgotten history, it is a mirror held up to our present. It reminds us that courage does not always roar from battlefields. Sometimes it whispers through forbidden vows spoken in the dark. Their love shattered the silence of an unjust world and left behind a truth more enduring than law or fear, that no system can enslave the soul that has known freedom through love. As we remember their defiance, we are called to question our own hearts. What boundaries still hold us captive, what prejudices still divide us, and what truths we are too afraid to live. Their legacy is a torch passed down through time, reminding us that love, when it stands against injustice, is not rebellion, it is redemption.